Hello everyone. Today the topic is obesity and Ozempic, the facts no one is talking about. So basically World Obesity Day was 2 days ago, I believe, on the 4th. And so we thought we'd cover the topic of obesity in general. We don't really talk about it much on here, but of course, weight management has strong implications on health and also gut health. And then in particular, Ozempic is, of course, a very hot topic and has been for the past probably 1 or 2 years. And its role in how it influences our gut health and actually the mechanism of how it works, I think a lot of people don't actually realize. So we wanted to go over that today on this video. So if you're watching, make sure you say hi in the comments. Let us know where you are from. In case you're new, my name is Joe. At Diet vs. Disease, we're a team of dietitians, nutritionists, mindset coaches, and if you have gut issues that have you feeling scared to eat, scared of symptoms, scared to travel for work or vacation, if you feel like you were left on your own to figure things out, we help people just like you. And so today I'm hosting with Tim and Melissa and Nick. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself very quickly, and then we can get started.
Thanks, Joe. I'm Tim Matthews, dietitian. I'm based in Brisbane in Australia. I'm currently facing down a tropical cyclone, first one to hit Brisbane in 50 years. So hopefully it's not too bad right now. I shouldn't lose power, but yeah, it's a crazy situation here. I've been working with Diet vs. Disease for over 5 years now, and I love working in the gut health space, helping our clients.
And my name is Melissa, and I'm located in San Diego, California. I've been with Diet vs. Disease now for a little over a year and a half, but prior to this, I worked in weight management for over 8 years. And so very passionate about both gut health and weight management.
Hey everyone, so my name's Nicholas and I am an Australian living in Madrid where I'm currently studying my medical degree, and I've been with Diet vs. Disease for coming up to 5 years almost, I think. Wow, time flies. And prior to that, I was working in sports nutrition, so a bit of a contrast there, but love what I do and love the work that everyone else that I work with does as well.
Thank you, Nick. How long until you're a doctor?
Still got another year or so of the degree left, then comes the specialty, but we'll wait and see.
Are you still thinking about doing, gastrointestinal health or not?
It's still in the mix, but a few other things have kind of come up that have also surprised me. So yeah, I've still got a bit of time to decide it, but yeah, GI medicine is definitely up there. It's been in the mix for a long time. That's why I went into it anyway, and that's kind of why I love working in with gut health. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening.
Good stuff.
What are the other specialties you're thinking of, Nick?
Bit of a mix actually. So love urology, love a bit of the surgical aspect of that, love dermatology. Plastic surgery was cool. I rotated in that last year. And I think they're the kind of like the top four, top five. I think I only said four, but yeah, a bit of a mix, but all of it, I don't know. As long as I get into one of them, I'll be happy.
Yeah,
Perfect.
fair enough.
So, yeah, if you're tuning in, if you've got a specific question on this topic, do let us know, and we'll try to get to it either now or after the video. So let's explore. So Tim, you're back, like before you worked with me, you were primarily working in weight loss, right? In the specific low carb diet.
Yeah, I was mainly working in type 2 diabetes management using low carb approaches, both ketogenic and low carb diets. And that was actually why I became a dietitian. I was fascinated with the whole ketogenic diet approach. And in Australia, it has taken hold quite firmly amongst doctors. And it was included in diabetes management guidelines in Australia that low carb diets were an approved approach. And I found it, yeah, a very quite a powerful way. And when people bought into it, it was a really effective way to help people manage their type 2 and lose weight in a fairly sustainable manner. But it's not the only method. You can lose weight via many approaches. It doesn't have to be a low carb or ketogenic diet. So we know that that's important. And it's also not necessarily the most sustainable approach for everyone when it comes to weight loss. But yeah, that's one of my backgrounds.
And so we know weight loss needs to be very individualized because it just depends on what resonates with that person for how long, like the biological factors for how long they've been overweight. And I guess that's where, GLP-1s have come in, and like Ozempic. And I know that you read a lot about, this area still. You follow some of the doctors and dietitians and things who are predominantly working in this area. So what's your overall, like, are they good or not? I know I'm starting broad, but what's your thought?
Yeah, no, they are highly effective, especially in comparison to typical diet approaches. They seem to be producing more meaningful weight loss over shorter periods of time in comparison to diet alone. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head. And what we're really lacking is long-term follow-up at the moment. But again, it seems to be that with the right approach, with the right supports, and with the right usage of the medication, of course, there is a lot of promise there. There is talk of excessive muscle mass loss and bone density loss in some cases, but there's a Dr. Nadolsky, who is heading up a national study in the US on GLP-1 use as part of a trial, especially with resistance training. And the early results seem to show that muscle and bone losses are not as bad as some people seem to promote, especially some classes of these GLP-1s. So some seem to be better than others.
Yeah. So if you've got, because there's a lot of implications, and people have been talking about side effects, and there's a lot of questions raised around, well, if you've got to take them, you're going to take them now, like, do you need to take them forever? And so I just think, let's start with, like, if you've got digestive issues, are they appropriate?
If you're already living with digestive issues, it's going to depend on the person. So the side effect profile of GLP-1 seems to be between 10 or more % of people will have side effects. The side effects seem to come dependent on dose. So titrating dose up from a low dose to an effective dose seems to be important. But that doesn't mean everyone who starts on a standard dose will get side effects. And obviously you can't predict who's going to have side effects. So someone with IBS due to, say, a FODMAP intolerance may or may not get side effects. And it's not because they've already got intolerances or functional issues with their gut. So that needs to be explored.
So I sort of noted down the main side effects the main side effects for Ozempic use as documented in the trials, and they're almost all digestive related. And so I just want to go over them with you guys and see your thoughts. So nausea is the main symptom. For 95% of people, it resolves itself. There doesn't seem to be a way to resolve that. And I think it was Dr. Nadolsky actually who was talking about this. He's very careful that you don't want to treat medication side effects with further medications. Then you're just going down this rabbit hole of lots of medication. So they're looking at how can they manage these symptoms, these side effects, without adding more medication. So nausea seems to resolve itself 95% of the time, but that means 5% it doesn't, and it can be quite severe. And then they remove those people from the drug. Constipation is the second most common. Okay, and that makes sense because the way that Ozempic works is that it delays your stomach emptying. It's called delayed gastric emptying. I think they also call it sleepy stomach. Is that the term?
Not I've not heard that one.
Yeah.
I've never heard sleepy stomach before. It sounds like a very friendly way to describe it, though.
Yeah, like a very colloquial
Yeah.
sleepy stomach, because basically you slow down the food digesting in the stomach and passing through. And so then you've got these signals to your brain that you're full. And that's what essentially helps reduce your appetite. And then people eat less, fewer calories, and that's why it's so effective. Yeah. I mean, I simplified that a lot. Does anyone think I missed anything there?
I don't think so.
Good simplification. Yeah.
Yeah. So constipation is second most common. It is recommended that then, if you are experiencing that, supplementing psyllium husk and adding lots of water and also movement. So walking even helps, but some sort of physical activity. And that is one way to manage it. But even then, some people, if it gets severe or constipation gets worse, or they started already with constipation, they can have a really difficult time staying on the drug. And then the next...
I'd just like to say, Joe, I think one of the issues that also may exist in constipation with GLP-1 is the fact that if your diet, if you're less hungry and you're eating less overall, and your diet wasn't very high in fiber in the first place, which we know of is going to be true for a lot of standard Western dieters, then there's not going to be much bulk to form for bowel motions, on GLP-1s, which is why it's important for people to, like adding in supplemental fiber is going to help, but reorienting diet to have more fiber from fruits and veg is going to be an important part of that too.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like recommendations that apply whether you take Ozempic or not, which we'll get to. The next one was the opposite of constipation, which was quite severe diarrhea. And they saw that 5% clinical rate that it would be considered severe. But usually it resolves quickly in the patients who got it. But I think it was Nadolski. He wasn't quite sure. They weren't quite sure why that was happening yet. But there is a range of these different side effects that they can attribute to Ozempic. And then reflux is the next issue, and that one makes sense, right? Because you are having food stay in the stomach for longer, where it's starting to digest, and then the gas is coming up the esophagus. And so that's been quite a strong issue in the studies they're doing on Ozempic. And that's a good example of where they're saying, we don't want to put people on, say, medication for reflux to treat a side effect of another medication. That wouldn't be very good practice. And that is something that they do a lot, especially in the US. And, I think it's good that they're sort of flagging that and considering that. Next one was fatigue. They seem to think they can attribute that specifically to Ozempic. And so then it was just a matter of, does the results of taking the drug outweigh the fatigue that it's causing? And they were letting the patients determine that. But I thought that was quite interesting. And then an increased risk of gallstones. So issues with your gallbladder. And they attributed that maybe to fast weight loss, actually. And that if that is the case, that's a side effect that, you can't really treat or avoid either. And so there's some of the main risks. I was trying to be transparent in the rates. You can see like they're not high, it's sort of 5% of people get this and, X% of people get that. But overwhelmingly, it looks pretty good. Ozempic looks pretty good. If you've got already digestive issues, which is not a patient population they're studying it in, I imagine the symptoms are more prevalent and more severe because this is on general healthy in terms of gut issues. I think that's not something they're factored in, but there's also studies on type 2 diabetes population. So whether you classify them as general healthy, but I mean, without known digestive issues. So the side effects aren't that bad. And I come across a lot of things that suggest that they are, or a lot of people, or a lot of social media posts. So Tim, I know that you are pretty savvy on that stuff. Do you want to tell us what are some of the wild claims, or the scary claims that may not be true?
In the early days, when we had, I think it's semaglutide only. In Australia, it's called, do you know what it's called in Australia, Nick? Semaglutide? It's got a decided name.
I just know it as semaglutide. Yeah, I don't know what the marketing name would be.
Yeah, I met a pharmaceutical rep, and that was 6, 7 years ago now. And she presented this medication to us and was like, this is a GLP-1 agonist. This is the new generation of drugs that are coming through now. And I read the warning label, and at that point, the warning was 50% of people will experience side effects. So I think people coming from early knowledge of these GLP-1s will be fear-mongering over 50% of people getting side effects. And obviously, pharmaceutical risk profiling on their own documents is always going to be erring on the side of caution. But yeah, you will see people in social media fear-mongering. At least 50% of people will have side effects. I've seen people promoting videos of people with eating disorders having used GLP-1s, and they are not the target market for GLP-1 medications because they're already at risk, highly at risk of nutrient deficiencies and vanity weight loss on the side of anorexia nervosa is not a good use of a GLP-1. So those are the big risks I've seen.
Yep. Nick?
Yeah, I was going to just jump in and just even ask. I think it's a good thing to also just reflect on the fact that whilst these drugs actually do exist, it's not just like you can go to the supermarket and just kind of like grab it off the shelf. Like the issue is when people can kind of get it at a bit more free will and they don't have, say, a medical team to actually overlook and actually see, are you at increased risk of X, Y, or Z? Because in a lot of countries, they would typically prescribe it to if someone, say, for example, I know over here in Spain, you need to have, say, for example, one of the conditions is a BMI above 30, which classifies as obesity, and also a HbA1c level above 7 or 7.5, I believe. And I think there's similar parameters in a lot of other countries as well. And so it's also understanding that if you do kind of satisfy those, even then it's not just like a golden ticket to actually getting these sorts of medications, because you could actually be at risk of getting some of these side effects that you and Joe were talking about.
I think the problem, though, is that we've seen a slew of celebrities who are not, in those categories at all, coming along and using these medications successfully, and they're in the public eye, so they go from, I don't know, size 2 to a size 0, whatever ridiculous weight loss it is, and that's massively popularized GLP-1s for vanity weight loss and has dominated supply. And there are people going out now to compound pharmacies to get these things compounded, I suppose, privately, without any sort of medical team support necessarily. So that's a huge worry. It's popularizing a drug for a use it shouldn't be used for.
Are you saying that celebrities are the problem?
In part, yes.
They're a part of it.
Oh dear.
Why not?
You're right. Okay.
Actually, I would say, Joe, the other interesting problem we've got now is a lot of influencers and this sort of the wellness sphere claiming this works like a GLP-1. This is a natural GLP-1, and promoting these absolute charlatan snake oil products that claim to have the same impact.
Great marketing. Yeah, like natural, nature's Ozempic.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is an oxymoron because your body actually produces GLP-1 and anyway.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, it's smart. It's smart. If I had my marketing hat on, it's very smart. Not my dietitian hat. So we've got some comments. Yeah, let us know if you have questions, by the way. Tim, I don't know if you're able to help with moderating comments. So Joy said, I just tried Zepbound and had, so I think that's one of the type 2 diabetes ones, the newer ones. I had to stop after the first week. Horrible side effects. Hives. That's really interesting. Isn't that really interesting? Food chemical, like maybe histamine or something. Insomnia, bloating, fast heart rate, diarrhea, etc. I started with the lowest dose. I think that's a good thing you bring up there, Joyce. But like, yeah, people need to. The goal is like you start on a low dose, and then the doctor will increase if you have to. But the goal for some people, if they've been obese their whole life, obesity is a chronic disease, and Ozempic is meant to be a chronic medication. In other words, it is long-term / indefinite that you are meant to be taking it. We could talk about more about that a bit later, but maybe in the best case scenario, you can come back down to a really low dose. I believe some people can come off it if perhaps their weight loss is more, their weight gain was more recent. And I'm talking about it from a weight management perspective, not type 2 diabetes. If their weight gain was more recent, they've seen people successfully start taking Ozempic and then be able to come off it and sort of sustain their results. They do regain a little bit, but not all. Whereas people who've been obese their majority of their life, if they come off it, they've seen that they gain the weight back. So it's really interesting. Melinda, yes, it'll be in the group. This video will be in the group. Tim, did you see any comment there you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, Tom Bear said that some of them are costing $1,000 a month here in the US, which is a very steep price to pay.
Can I
know
just
there is-
comment on that quickly? So my guilty pleasure is I watch a lot of YouTube, and I get all sorts of things, but one of them was I think it was like a CNBC report about the price of Wegovy, like and Ozempic, things like that in the US. And yeah, Tom, it was something like $1,000+ a month in the US, whereas in Europe, in Denmark, where it comes from, it's like $4 to $6. So the markup is 40,000% in the US, and there's a lot of issues with that, obviously, from the US saying like, they're scalping over there, but just I don't know the ins and outs, so I'm not going to comment on that. And I'm sure I've got some of that wrong, or there's a lot of hearsay there, but a 40,000% markup and only in certain countries. I mean, yeah, that's in a dietetic service, you can do a markup of like 20% maybe. But in pharmaceuticals, you can mark up 40,000%, and no one bats an eye.
Yeah, it's crazy. There is one company announced that they're dropping their price to $499 a month, but it was one of the lesser popular drugs. It's not as effective as some of the others. But yeah, still, it is crazy.
Tom,
I
I was just going to say, I wonder if Tom, like, does any of the medicine costs get covered for you by your insurance or something? Or are you supposed to just pay it all out of pocket?
I imagine with comorbidities, there would be insurance companies that do cover it, as long as they've got coverage for those comorbidities. Maybe Tom can say. There's an interesting comment here. I asked my friend on GLPs what they ate during the day. It sounds like they're eating 1,000 calories a day because they aren't hungry. I don't find that sustainable really or realistic for living. Is this really what it does? It just makes you eat significantly less than normal. And the answer is yes. So it's acting on the hormones that your body produces on hunger and satiety hormones, as well as your insulin levels, to suppress appetite. And that's exactly the same way that gastric bypass surgery works, right? So you remove a portion of the stomach that removes some of the hormone signaling, and therefore you just feel less hungry more of the time. And that helps to create a caloric deficit. You eat less, you lose body fat. The thing I find interesting about it is that, yeah, 1,000 calories a day in any size body is going to produce a huge caloric deficit, which is going to result for a lot of people in very rapid weight loss. And that does bring with it those risks of high muscle mass losses and potential bone mass loss. And that needs to be managed really well, because you don't want to lose muscle mass as you lose body fat. So you need to make it as sustainable as possible, using ideally a high protein diet that's nutrient dense. The same as we see in managing medical weight loss via surgery. That can also produce really rapid weight loss, because it has really severe side effects early on if you don't adhere to the diet effectively. So yeah, it is exactly that.
Yeah, it's the other thing, 1,000 calories, can you really meet your micronutrient requirements? So when we look about vitamins and minerals, when I talk about that, you're certainly probably not meeting fiber. Okay. Your macros of protein, like you said, that you won't be meeting that unless you supplement with something that has no calories, which if you're not hungry, you definitely don't want to drink a protein drink. Yeah. Then you're not meeting your protein, so then you won't be able to maintain your muscle mass when you lose weight, and so you'll end up losing muscle mass and fat mass. In some instances, more muscle mass than fat mass, right? And then what about bone health? Is that just a myth then? Doesn't impact that at all?
No, it's definitely not a myth. Go on, Nick.
No, I was just going to say definitely not a myth either, because I mean a lot of those the minerals that actually contribute to bone health, they're regulated based on the levels of other sort of electrolytes in your body. So like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, vitamin D, they're very tightly regulated. For example, the parathyroid gland, that's one of the main regulators of that sort of bone health metabolism as well. So if you're not meeting your micronutrient, your vitamin and mineral targets for what your body actually needs, then of course you're going to be putting at risk your body's capacity to actually try and buffer that system. Especially in, say, for example, postmenopausal women, where obviously the effective hormones and things start to change. That on top of the other bone health changes that are going to going on, it's a recipe for a bone disaster. Like it needs to be addressed. Like that nutritional side of it needs to be addressed. And if you're getting 1,000 calories, it just makes it so much harder.
And Nick, have you seen nutritional guidance or recommendations from any agencies alongside the use of GLP-1s yet? Because I haven't.
As in terms of like them actually being factored into proper
Yeah.
guidelines is like a recommendation to my knowledge, no. But I haven't actually looked recently to say that. Like, I mean, they might, but I haven't come across it.
Okay. Melissa.
Yeah, I was just gonna speak upon what Nick was mentioning of like, even though, these GLP-1s can help with fat loss, there still needs to be like nutrition considerations. And so I don't think a GLP-1 will replace your like a healthy diet or exercise. So you still need to take in consideration your micronutrient intake or your protein intake or getting strength training in. So I think it can help with that part of starting a healthy diet, making it more easier to do those things. But then I think the next step is, well, I got to make sure look at my nutrition quality. Maybe that's through your doctor or a dietitian helping that.
Do we have,
Yeah, that's
Melissa, do we have any clients who are currently using Ozempic that we're aware of?
We do. We do have a few. Some do not have side effects on it, so they're using it to help primarily with the weight loss. From what I've seen, like with, my current caseload as a success manager, it is really helping them because before then, biology standpoint, they just had such a high appetite. It was very hard to stick to like any nutrition recommendations. But now by being on the GLP-1s, they can stick to their nutrition breakdown set by their dietitian, and it's making it easier for them to see progress, stay motivated, and then work on their gut health now.
And follow sort of a new eating pattern or a set plan. What about tracking? What about tracking them? Are they sort of more motivated to do the kind of, I don't know, steps we'd say that you typically do if you weren't just relying on a weight loss surgery or a weight loss drug?
Oh, I think absolutely. Because I think when you're always dealing with like a higher appetite, it's almost like something's working against you. And I think the issue with GLP-1s is there can be a lot of shame around it. I know in the wellness space, people are saying they're a shortcut or they're easy, but like you guys mentioned, obesity is a chronic disease, so there needs to be medical intervention sometimes. And when it's included, now these individuals can do the things, but it's just easier for them. Kind of similar if someone needs to be on a high cholesterol medication or to help with their lower blood pressure. These medications make it easier to do like the lifestyle changes. And I do think it does help with the motivation because you're seeing progress, kind of like with gut health. If you follow like the diet recommendations and you see progress, you're more likely to stick with it. Yeah, that's my perspective.
I was I think the thing I love about these medications and that more of the evidence-based peeps are highlighting is the fact that they seem to turn off food noise for people. So if anyone's heard this, have you heard this concept before, Joe, of food noise? It seems that some people, especially perhaps people living in bigger bodies, really struggle with this constant dialogue and of what am I eating? What's next? This constant desire for food, this constant cycle of noise in their head around the desire to eat. And some people report that a GLP-1 just switches it off and they're free from that noise finally. And it's this really powerful change in their mind. And the theory is just that there is this innate genetic predisposition for some people to be more exposed to the desire to eat than others, than perhaps people who live in smaller bodies. And I think that's really an amazing tool for someone who struggles with that side of their weight.
So actually no example of food noise. So essentially it was like when you take Ozempic and you're eating your normal dinner meal, maybe it makes you feel full quicker. So you stop because you're done. And normally you'd keep eating that meal, but with Ozempic, you're like, I really don't want to eat anymore. And then, your partner opens the oven and is like, I've also got these brownies that you love, or I've just baked this next batch of cookies. And now normally it's like, you can be full on your main meal, the savory, but I have room for dessert, right? I'm going to eat a little bit of that for sure. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But with Ozempic, it's like the thought of that dessert after is completely it's unappealing. You're disinterested completely. And that's the difference that Ozempic is making. And that's possibly, Tim, an example of like food noise. I mean, not a great example, but like just for people to start to articulate, there's hungry and then there's like, I can actually still eat a little bit of that. That'd be delicious. Whereas with GLP-1s, it's like even that thing is also not interesting at all. And that's how they're getting these calories down so fast. Which sounds kind of sad, like in a way that, removing the joy of food, but in some contexts it's good. So it's like, I'm torn with these. They're super useful for the right person and perhaps very disruptive for the wrong person. one other benefit I noted down was that, and I guess this sort of touches on what you said, Tim, but there's a lot of stress and anxiety, and then I added in guilt around food. And Ozempic or GLP-1s can help to remedy that. And I like the idea of that the food noise, the guilt, the stress and anxiety, I want to eat that, but I didn't know I shouldn't. That gets removed. And in certain people, I think that's super beneficial. However, like we talked about with like celebrities promoting it, and there's a lot of people where it's not really probably a net win. And when we look at what do you need to do to reach your weight goal and maintain your weight goal, nothing much really changes whether you're taking Ozempic or not. And so, Melissa, maybe do you want to touch on like what if, speaking with some clients recently, for example, like what have they been doing that has been working really well for keeping them on track? And then thinking about like, yeah, would they need to do that when they're on Ozempic as well or not? What are you sort of seeing there?
Yeah, I would say when clients, speak with their doctor about Ozempic, it's usually because they've tried a lot of different things to try to lose weight. And so, they're not unknown to what to do. It's they just need more support. But for clients, for me, it's like your first go around losing weight. I always say like mindset is typically the key thing that I would address with someone because when you're entering weight loss, like it's, got to set expectations right, that it's probably going to be harder than you may think it is, or it's probably going to take a little bit longer than you expect, or just expect setbacks. You're not going to be perfect. The scale's not always going to go down. That probably could be the same for Ozempic as well. But then it really is changing your whole entire, lifestyle. Small steps, though. I will say that starting very, very small, such as maybe that's getting out for a walk, doing something small, or focusing on increasing your protein intake or a more fruit and vegetable intake. So my main thing is whether you're on Ozempic or you're not, a lot of the same things still apply of high protein diet, watching your fiber intake, strength training, being active, taking care of your mental health. Those things will still be a priority. So I would say, yeah, no matter what client I'm talking to, those are still going to be like the core principles.
I think perspective is a big one. I like to say to one of my clients who I meet, let's say they want to lose 100 pounds, I will say to them, how long did it take you to get to the weight you're at now? And they might say 30 years, or to 20 years, or 10 years. And I'll say, what's your goal? I want to lose 100 pounds in the next 16 weeks. And I'll say, well, does that sound realistic in comparison to the amount of time it took you to get to the weight you're at, right? You need to have perspective. And a lot of people suddenly realize, oh, maybe I am in a bit of too much of a hurry to lose all the weight now. You need to take a long approach.
Yeah, no one wants to hear that, mate.
No. People need to hear these things, Joe.
That's why you're so unpopular.
But he gets the result.
Eventually, the slowest one. But they last.
If they get there and they stay there.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I would like to highlight something else as well. There's a friend sent me a video the other day of a guy talking about companies now redeveloping their fast foods, their snack foods, to have even better vanishing caloric density, literally because people are buying fewer fast foods, snack foods in the USA right now because of this wave of GLP-1 medications being successful. So companies are having to reformulate foods to be easier to eat on a GLP-1 so that they can still sell their product, or in an attempt to sell their product.
Oh, you mean like
as
the texture of the food, or
changing the texture and the composition so that so it doesn't fill you up as quickly, so it doesn't have the same hormonal effect, which is just wild to me that these companies are so predatory. Imagine they're not making enough profits already.
It'd be really interesting, yeah, how fast food chains, yeah, how their revenues are impacted or not, because
Mm.
it's big business. I think it's the largest export of all of Scandinavia now. Like Denmark just became infinitely richer since
Mm.
this drug. Super fascinating. Nice. All right. Let's quickly have a look.
Yeah, Tom says it's living to eat instead of eating to live. I'd love for that switch to be turned off for me. Andrea Marie said, sorry I'm being so vocal in here, but does apple cider vinegar with honey, with water, and also drinking a boatload of water a day also help quiet food noise some? I don't know if, Nick, you want to talk about the effect of hydration on appetite?
It was also just the hydration, but also even just like the whole volume, so to speak, as well. So one of the key regulators in regulating appetite is, so the first stop once you eat or drink something goes down the esophagus and into the stomach, right? And so there's these receptors that are on, say, like the surface of the stomach that respond to the degree of stretch that's going on there. So there's also other ones that help detect, say, for example, things like the protein, fat, and fiber intake as it's starting to kind of move through your digestive system. And all of those kind of contribute to the regulation of the appetite. So if someone's just like necking a bottle of water, either just before, during, or just after, then that's going to really make you feel quite full in a very short amount of time. And temporarily, it may say, for example, be like, hey, that's enough. But at the end of the day, if your overall kind of like food volume hasn't kind of given you enough, your body's going to be like, hey, I'm starting to detect that the blood sugar is getting a little bit low. It's going to start to kind of ramp things up again. So obviously the distribution would be a key there. But in response to the question, yeah, it can contribute to helping regulate the appetite, but also if people are dehydrated as well, that can also be a factor that helps to try and skyrocket the appetite too, because it's like your body kind of goes into this system like, hey, it needs like a little bit more. You start to think about more things. You start to think about that quicker kind of hit. You're probably going to go for something that's probably the easier sugary alternative or something quick and easy that will spike your blood sugar levels quite quickly, give you a hit for about 20 minutes. Then about 30 minutes later, you need to kind of do it again. So all of those factors do kind of contribute to it. But it's not just, say, for example, those receptors, like, for example, what Ozempic works on, but it's also those other ones that respond to kind of the degree of stretch that's in the stomach as well.
Mm. Seems that chronic low-level dehydration seems to increase people's cravings for salty or sweet foods in some cases, or at least the perception of a need for salty or sweet foods. But if you actually do get those cravings and you drink water, those cravings will often drop away. And if they don't, perhaps you haven't eaten for a while and you actually do need to eat. So yeah, it's interesting.
It's interesting you say that, Tim. So, for example, I think we can all possibly relate to this to one degree or another, finishing the popcorn before the movie starts. So it's because those sorts of like sugary snacks, they're gonna start to interfere with that whole sensation of like, hey, you're getting full. You just keep eating it because like it tastes absolutely amazing. And you've seen three trailers and now the box is empty and the movie hasn't started because you're kind of just like into autopilot, just constantly snacking on those savory foods. And if you're already dehydrated, that's going to dehydrate you even more, or just kind of obviously change the osmolarity in your
Mm.
system. And yeah, you're exactly right.
You haven't been to an American cinema, clearly, Nick, because the box of popcorn are like
Oh
that.
wow. Time to
Yeah.
book a plane ticket then. I'm a bit hungry.
You
Yeah.
can
We
get
still finish it though. We still finish it.
Yeah, you can get sweet and salty. So actually, when I went to New York with my now wife, this was in 2014. We went to New York and we went to the movies. And normally here in Europe, we don't like to share popcorn because we fight. Because I think she eats it too fast. She says I eat too slow. I don't know. I don't know who's right or wrong, but in any case, I don't think we share it evenly. And so we buy separate popcorns. And so we made the mistake of ordering 2 large popcorns in the US, and like I was almost sick because I just kept eating, as you said, Nick, like throughout the whole movie. But like this thing is the biggest thing I've ever seen, and we had one each, and as soon as we got them, like he put them on the desk, and we had to pay, and we were like looked at each other like, yeah, we screwed up.
In Spain, they do popcorn tapas to share with everyone. No, it's a joke.
Oh.
But it wouldn't be a bad idea.
That sounds like a spread of flus.
They
And
share or they share the food everywhere. Sometimes it's good, other times I just really want my own plate.
All right, so let's wrap this up. So I'm just gonna sort of try to summarize, and you guys can add to this. I'll say, so with Ozempic, there's certainly no shame in taking Ozempic, and you shouldn't feel embarrassed if you are, because some people like hide the fact, but it's very effective. It's proven to work. The side effects are quite mild in terms of the main digestive side effects that it has. You've got to know that it can cause digestive issues or exacerbate them. So try to make note of that if you're starting it, and see what happens for you. But without doing the fundamentals, if weight loss is your goal, it's not a cure-all at all. It could, in fact, I don't know, exacerbate issues if you rely on Ozempic and don't actually do the other things you need. And then there can be more risks associated with it, related particularly to nutrient deficiencies, muscle mass, and then bone loss as well. Does anyone want to add some things to that?
I'd like to add that it should be used as part of a multidisciplinary team approach, and that should include a dietitian and either a personal trainer or an exercise physiologist, or maybe a physical therapist, because your adherence to the medication and your progress will be much more, much safer, especially in those examples of mitigating bone and muscle mass losses. And I mean, ideally, like what we do is we include mindset coaching as well in our program. So you're addressing you're not just doing something that turns off your desire to eat, because if you were to go off that medication at some point, that's just going to come back. We address the root cause, and that root cause could be emotional eating, stress eating, and those habits can still be there even if you're not hungry. And so, it's important to address those things alongside taking a medication.
Nice. Great. Thank you, guys. If anyone watching wants to learn more about our program and how it works and all of that, just comment premium or message me premium. And if you leave the comment, then we go look for that word and we can send you more details. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you guys for jumping on and sharing this. I think this was fun. I think this is a really interesting topic. And the more we talk about it, the more I'm kind of like making notes about possible spin-off topics we could do another time. All right. See you, everyone.
Thank you.